The mahogany boardroom table gleamed under the morning light, reflecting years of family legacy and power. I sat there, hands folded neatly in my lap, watching my father pace back and forth like a prosecutor ready to deliver his final argument. My brother Marcus leaned against the wall, arms crossed, a hint of a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Alexandra," my father began, his voice carrying that familiar tone of disappointment I'd grown accustomed to over the years. "We need to discuss your position at Harrison Industries." I nodded quietly, already knowing where this conversation was heading. For 15 years, I'd worked my way up through every department of our family's manufacturing company. Not because I had to. Being a Harrison meant I could have walked straight into an executive role, but because I wanted to understand every aspect of the business my grandfather had built from nothing. "The board meeting yesterday," he continued, running a hand through his silver hair. "That was the final straw." Ah, yes, the board meeting, where I'd suggested implementing a profit-sharing program for our factory workers and investing in sustainable manufacturing practices, where I'd presented data showing how employee satisfaction directly correlated with productivity and innovation, where I'd dared to challenge the old guard's perspective on what made a business successful. "You're too soft, Alexandra," my father declared, finally stopping his pacing to look me directly in the eyes. "This isn't a charity, it's a business, and business requires tough decisions, not whatever this bleeding heart approach is you're trying to push." Marcus pushed himself off the wall, stepping forward. "Dad's right, Lex. You're going to run this company into the ground with all these worker-friendly policies and green initiatives. We're here to make money, not friends." I sat straighter, maintaining my composure. "The data supports my proposals. Happy workers are productive workers. Sustainable practices attract modern consumers and investors. It's not just about being nice. It's about long-term growth and stability." My father slammed his hand on the table, making the water glasses rattle. "Enough. I've made my decision. You're fired, Alexandra. Come back when you learn what it really takes to run a business, when you develop some backbone." The words hung in the air like smoke, acrid and suffocating. I should have felt devastated, should have argued, pleaded, fought back. Instead, I felt something else entirely: relief. What they didn't know, what none of them had bothered to discover, was that I'd been preparing for this moment for years. While they were busy dismissing my ideas as soft and naive, I'd been building something of my own, something that would change everything. I stood up slowly, smoothing my charcoal gray skirt. "I understand," I said calmly. "I'll have my office cleared by end of day." My father's brow furrowed, clearly thrown by my lack of resistance. "That's it? No argument?" "No argument," I confirmed, picking up my leather portfolio. "You've made yourself clear." Marcus laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "See, Dad, too soft to even fight for her position. Maybe this will finally teach her how the real world works." I walked to the door, then paused, turning back one last time. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said quietly, "and good luck." They didn't understand the weight of those words. Not yet. But they would. As I packed my office that afternoon, carefully placing 15 years of memories into cardboard boxes, I thought about the journey that had led me here. About the nights I'd spent studying market trends while my colleagues partied. About the quiet investments I'd made, the connections I'd built, the foundation I'd laid while everyone assumed I was just playing at business. My assistant, Sarah, stood in the doorway, tears in her eyes. "I can't believe they're doing this to you, after everything you've done for the company." I smiled, placing a framed photo of my grandfather into the last box. "It's okay, Sarah." "Really? But your ideas were working," she protested. "Productivity is up 30% in departments that implemented your programs. Employee turnover is down. The sustainability initiative has attracted 3 major eco-conscious clients." "I know," I said softly. "But sometimes people only see what they expect to see. They look at me and see softness where there's actually strategy. They mistake kindness for weakness." Sarah helped me carry the boxes to my car, her silence heavy with unasked questions. As I loaded the last one into the trunk, she finally spoke. "What will you do now?" I closed the trunk, then turned to her with a calm smile. Now I'm going to show them what real business acumen looks like." That evening, as I sat in my home office overlooking the city lights, I opened my laptop and typed out a simple email. To Victor Morrison, subject: "Time to move." "Victor, the situation we discussed has developed as expected. I'm ready to proceed with Phase 1. Best, Alexander Harrison." Victor's response came within minutes. "Are you sure?" "Once we start, there's no going back." I didn't hesitate. "I'm sure." "Let's begin." What my father and brother didn't know was that 3 years ago, I'd started quietly building a competing company. Nova Manufacturing had begun as a small operation, but through careful planning and strategic acquisitions, we'd grown into a formidable force in the industry. I'd used a different name, operated through holding companies, kept my involvement completely hidden. While they were busy mocking my soft approach to business, I'd been revolutionizing manufacturing processes, implementing the very programs they'd rejected at Harrison Industries. And it was working. Nova's productivity rates were industry-leading. Our employee satisfaction scores were off the charts. Our sustainable practices had attracted major contracts and positive press. Most importantly, we were profitable. Very profitable. I opened my safe and pulled out a thick folder, documentation of every misstep Harrison Industries had made over the past decade. Every cut corner, every ignored safety regulation, every instance of creative accounting. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I believed in doing business the right way. And sometimes, the right way required cleaning house. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Hope you learned your lesson, sis. Business isn't for the weak." I set the phone down without responding. Let him think he'd won. Let them all think that. Because in 3 months, when our first major move became public, they'd learn exactly who they'd underestimated. The next morning, I walked into Nova Manufacturing's headquarters through a private entrance. My office, taking up the top floor of a renovated industrial building, was everything my father would hate. Open concept, filled with natural light, walls covered in sustainability awards and employee recognition programs. Maria, my chief operating officer, waited for me with a stack of reports. "Everything's ready," she said. "The numbers look even better than projected." I took the reports, scanning the figures that confirmed what I already knew. We were positioned perfectly for what came next. "How are you feeling?" Maria asked, studying my face. "It couldn't have been easy, being fired from your family's company." I looked up, meeting her concerned gaze. Actually, it was exactly what needed to happen. They think they're teaching me a lesson about being tough in business. But they're about to learn that true strength isn't about being harsh or cruel. It's about building something sustainable, something that matters. "And now," she prompted. "Now," I said, turning to the wall of windows overlooking the city, "we show them exactly what soft leadership can accomplish." That afternoon, I called a company-wide meeting. 300 employees gathered in our main conference space, not seated in rows like at Harrison Industries, but in collaborative groups around tables. These were people who had chosen to work here, who believed in our vision of what manufacturing could be. As some of you may have heard, I began, standing at the front of the room. Harrison Industries has recently made some leadership changes. This creates an opportunity for us. Over the next 3 months, we're going to demonstrate that profitability and responsibility aren't mutually exclusive. That treating people well isn't weakness. It's the strongest business strategy there is. The room erupted in applause. These people knew what we were building here. They believed in it because they lived it every day. After the meeting, I sat alone in my office, looking at an old photo of my grandfather. He built Harrison Industries from nothing, driven by a vision of creating something meaningful. Somewhere along the way, that vision had been lost, replaced by an obsession with short-term profits and power plays. My phone buzzed again. Another text from my father. The board approved your termination unanimously. Remember this lesson. I smiled, thinking about the lessons that were coming, because while they were busy congratulating themselves on their toughness, I was about to show them what real business innovation looked like. And it would start tomorrow, with phase 1 of a plan 3 years in the making. A plan that would reshape not just Harrison Industries, but the entire industry. They thought they'd fired a soft, naive dreamer. They were about to meet a strategist who'd been playing chess while they were playing checkers. The game was finally beginning. Phase 1 began on a Tuesday morning, exactly 1 week after I'd walked out of Harrison Industries. I sat in my office at Nova Manufacturing, watching the financial news ticker scroll across my screen. Right on schedule, at 9:30 a.m., the announcement hit. Nova Manufacturing acquires Sterling Solutions, creating industry's first fully integrated sustainable supply chain. The acquisition had been in the works for months. Sterling Solutions was Harrison Industries' biggest supplier, providing nearly 60% of their raw materials. My father had always dismissed them as just another vendor. He never bothered to build a relationship with their leadership, never saw the strategic value in their position. I had. My phone started buzzing immediately. First, a message from Maria. It's done. Sterling's board just signed the final papers. We own controlling interest. Then came the text I'd been waiting for, from Marcus. Did you see the news about Sterling? This is bad, Lex. Really bad. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my email to find exactly what I expected. A message from Harrison Industries' procurement director requesting an urgent meeting with Nova's leadership to discuss ongoing supply arrangements. They had no idea I was that leadership. By noon, the industry was buzzing. Nova Manufacturing, previously seen as a rising but modest player, had just become a major force. Our stock jumped 12% on the news. Sterling's rose 15%. Harrison Industries dropped 8%. I picked up my phone and dialed Victor Morrison, my mentor and the one person who'd believed in my vision from the start. The dominoes are falling, he said when he answered. Your father just called me in a panic, asking if I'd consider emergency investment in Harrison. Apparently, their other suppliers are already raising prices, sensing blood in the water. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it. Should I mention I've been invested in Nova since day one? I smiled. Not yet. Let's see how Phase 2 plays out first. Phase 2 began the following week. While Harrison Industries scrambled to secure new supply lines and manage their dropping stock price, we launched our masterstroke. Nova announced a revolutionary profit-sharing program for all employees, combined with industry-leading sustainability initiatives. It was everything I'd tried to implement at Harrison Industries, but on a grander scale. The press ate it up. Manufacturing's new model. Nova shows how business can be both profitable and responsible. Read one headline. The future of industry. Nova's revolutionary approach attracts top talent and investors, declared another. The day after the announcement, 3 of Harrison's top engineers submitted their resignations. By the end of the week, that number had grown to 12, all headed to Nova. That's when my father finally called. Alexandra. His voice was strained, lacking its usual authoritative tone. We need to talk. About what? You know damn well about what. This company you're working for, Nova. They're systematically destroying us. I need you to use your connections there. Help us negotiate a reasonable supply agreement with Sterling. I let the silence stretch for a moment. I thought I was too soft for business, Dad. Too naive to understand how things really work. Alexandra, please. This isn't about that. This is about family. No, I said quietly. This is about consequences. About learning that treating people well isn't weakness. That sustainable business isn't just about next quarter's profits. What are you saying? I'm saying that in about an hour, Nova Manufacturing will announce its next acquisition. You might want to prepare the board. I hung up before he could respond. Then I opened my laptop and sent the email I'd been preparing for 3 years. 2. Harrison Industries Board of Directors subject. Acquisition offer. Distinguished board members. Nova Manufacturing hereby offers to acquire Harrison Industries at $42 per share, a 40% premium over current market value. Given recent market developments and supply chain challenges, we believe this represents a generous valuation. I signed it with my full name. Alexander Harrison, CEO and founder, Nova Manufacturing. The response was nuclear. My phone exploded with messages. From board members, from industry contacts, from employees past and present. But the one that mattered most came from Marcus. It was you. All along, it was you. I texted back a single word. Yes. Within an hour, I was walking into Harrison Industries' boardroom. The same room where, just weeks ago, I'd been fired for being too soft. Now I entered as a conqueror, though that's not how I saw it. I saw myself as a reformer. The board members sat in stunned silence. My father stood at the head of the table, face ashen. Marcus slumped in his chair, looking like someone had just explained that water was actually dry. Hello, everyone, I said calmly, setting my portfolio on the table. Shall we discuss terms? How? My father demanded. How did you do this? I paid attention, I replied. While you were focused on showing everyone how tough you could be, I was building relationships. While you dismissed employee welfare as softness, I was creating a company people actually wanted to work for. While you ignored sustainability as a tree hugger's concern, I was securing contracts with the biggest players in the modern market. I opened my portfolio and began laying out documents. 3 years ago, when you shut down my proposal for employee profit sharing, I started Nova. Every time you dismissed one of my soft ideas, I implemented it there instead. And guess what? It worked. Not just worked, it thrived. The board members were already flipping through the acquisition proposal, their expressions shifting from shock to grudging admiration as they saw the numbers. Your choice is simple, I continued. Accept the offer, and we'll create something remarkable, a company that leads the industry not just in profits, but in innovation and responsibility. Refuse, and watch as your supply costs continue to rise, your talent continues to leave, and your market share continues to shrink. Marcus spoke up, his voice hollow. You planned this? All of it? No, I corrected him. I simply built something better. The fact that it's now in position to acquire Harrison Industries is just poetic justice. My father sank into his chair, looking suddenly old. Why didn't you tell us? Why the secrecy? Would you have listened? I asked quietly. Or would you have dismissed it as another one of my soft ideas? The silence was answer enough. 1 week later, the acquisition was approved. The press called it the industry's biggest shakeup in decades. The market responded enthusiastically, with both companies' stocks rising on the news. But the real victory came in the details. Every policy I'd once been mocked for suggesting would now be implemented across the entire organization. On the day the deal closed, I sat in my father's old office, my office now, looking at my grandfather's portrait on the wall. The door opened, and my father walked in. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he said, looking older and humbler than I'd ever seen him, about strength and what it really means. I waited. You showed me that I was wrong, he continued. That real strength isn't about being tough or harsh. It's about having the vision to see what others don't, and the patience to build it right. It's about balance, I said softly. Being firm enough to make hard decisions, but human enough to make the right ones. He nodded slowly. You're a better business leader than I ever was, than I ever could be. That's not true, I replied. You built something great. You just forgot why you built it. But now we have a chance to remember, and to make it even better. The next morning, I called my first company-wide meeting as CEO of the merged organizations. Thousands of employees, from both Harrison and Nova, gathered in our main auditorium and via video link. Some of you know me as the soft executive who got fired, I began. Others know me as the founder of Nova. Today, I want you to know me as someone who believes that true business success comes not from being the toughest, but from being the wisest. Not from demanding respect, but from earning it. I laid out our vision: sustainable practices, fair wages, profit sharing, innovative technologies. But more than that, I laid out a new way of thinking about business itself. They called me soft, I said, because I believed in treating people well. They called me naive, because I thought business could be both profitable and responsible. Today, we're one of the industry's most successful companies precisely because of those beliefs. The applause was deafening. Later that evening, as I prepared to leave the office, I found Marcus waiting by my door. I've been offered a position at our West Coast division, he said. I'm not sure I deserve it. Everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow, I replied, even those who once called others soft. He smiled slightly. Will you teach me how to lead the right way? Of course, I said. That's what family does. As I drove home that night, I thought about the journey. About being underestimated and dismissed. About being called soft in a world that worshipped tough. I thought about how true strength often comes disguised as softness, and how the quietest plans sometimes carry the most power. 3 years ago, they fired me for being too soft. Today, that softness had revolutionized an industry. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting it right. And as I looked at the city skyline, at the buildings where thousands of people would come to work tomorrow in a company that valued them, I knew that this was just the beginning. Because soft doesn't mean weak. Sometimes it means being strong enough to change the world.